Welcome to Kingston Library Services YouTube channel and Facebook page. My name is Lou and today I will be reading the classic fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen. It is titled The Little Mermaid. This tale has been retold by Stephanie Laslett. Far out to sea, the water is as blue as a cornflower and as clear as the purest crystal, but it is deep. So deep that very, very many church towers could be stacked from the seabed, one on top of the other, before they would reach the surface high above. Here dwelt the mer people in their wonderful underwater world, and just where the water was deepest stood the palace of the Mer King. It was a magnificent sight, with coral walls and amber windows. The roof was made of mussel shells, which constantly opened and closed as the seawater billowed over them. The Mer King's wife had died some years before, so he lived in the palace with his mother and 6 daughters. The princesses were all very beautiful, but the youngest was the most beautiful of all. She was a quiet, thoughtful little girl and spent most of her time alone in her garden. Here she planted her favourite seaweeds in a rainbow of colours. Under the tree was her prized possession, a white marble statue of a boy, which she had rescued from a shipwreck. The fronds of seaweed gently stroked the cold marble body, and the little princess often sat beside him and wondered who he might be. She spent long hours thinking about the upper world and gave her grandmother no peace until the old woman had recounted everything she knew about the human beings who lived in the land above the sea. "On your 15th birthday," said her grandmother, "you will be allowed to rise to the surface. There you can sit on the rocks in the moonlight and watch the ships sail by." The little girl longed for the years to pass quickly, but alas, she was the youngest daughter and had to wait 6 whole years before it was her turn to see the world of men. As each of her sisters came of age and rose to the surface, the little mermaid would wait eagerly for their news. Their stories were filled with the sound of ringing church bells, distant music and laughter and far-away birdsong. They saw magical sunsets, dancing dolphins, and children playing happily on the shore. Each sister was quite enchanted by so many new delights, but the novelty was soon over, and they were happy to return to their home deep at the bottom of the sea. The youngest princess was impatient for her time to come. "If only I was 15, she sighed. "How I wish I could see the upper world." The years slowly passed, and at last her birthday arrived. "Well, now it is your turn," said her grandmother. "Come, let me dress you." And around the princess's hair she wound a wreath of white lilies sprinkled with pearls. The little mermaid fidgeted and begged her to hurry, as at long last she was ready to leave. "Farewell," she cried, as she rode through the sea like a silver bubble. When she reached the surface, the sun had just slipped below the horizon, and the clouds gleamed pink and gold. The evening stars shone in the pale western sky. Not a breath of air stirred, and the sea was as smooth as a mirror. It was the most beautiful sight she had ever seen. Then, to her delight, she spied a large ship close by. As the sky above grew dark, hundreds of lamps burst into light, and music and song rang out from the decks. The little mermaid peeped inside the cabins. There she saw many richly dressed men, but the handsomest of all was a young prince with large black eyes. It was his 16th birthday, and everyone was celebrating. When the prince stepped out on deck, 100 rockets shot up into the air, turning night into day, and so terrifying the little mermaid that she dived beneath the waves for safety. But soon curiosity got the better of her, and up she came again for another look. The sight that met her startled eyes nearly took her breath away, for it seemed as if all the stars of heaven were raining down upon her. Fiery sparks raced across the velvet sky as bright starbursts exploded high above. All was mirrored in the glassy surface of the water, until the light was so great it seemed like day. The little mermaid stared and stared. It was getting late, but she could not bear to leave the ship and the handsome young prince. Time passed, but still she lingered, rocked to and fro by the gentle waves. Suddenly, thick black clouds gathered overhead, and distant thunder could be heard. The waves rose high, and the great ship was tossed on the ocean as if it were a flimsy rowing boat. "Hurry, hurry!" the sailors cried as they rushed about the deck. "A storm is on its way!" The little mermaid had never seen such a sight before, and did not understand the danger, but the poor crew were terrified and called to God for mercy. Suddenly the ship shuddered, her side cracked, and the sea water poured in. The mainmast snapped like a reed, and slowly the ship overturned and slid beneath the waves. Above the howling wind, the little mermaid could hear the sailors' screams as they clung to the wreckage in the sea. "The prince!" she gasped. "He must not die!" At last she found him, clinging to a broken beam. His eyes were closed, and he would surely have lost his grip and drowned had the little mermaid not come to his rescue. With all her strength she held him above the water until morning. Then, when the storm had died down and the sea rose like fire out of the sea, she saw the distant shore and knew she must get him there. As he lay motionless on the beam, he reminded her of her own dear statue. Tenderly, the mermaid kissed his forehead, stroked the wet hair from his eyes. Then she set out for land, pulling the prince beside her. When she reached the warm sand, she left him and hid behind the rocks at the water's edge. There was a school close by, and soon the door opened and several girls ran down the steps and across the sand. Suddenly they stopped. They had discovered the prince. The mermaid watched as one girl knelt down by his side, whilst her school friend stayed some way off and called to her to come. Their voices roused the prince, and he slowly opened his eyes to see the face of a young girl bending over him. With a shriek, she jumped to her feet, and they all ran back to the safety of their school. Then the prince remembered a girl rescuing him from the sea. That was surely the girl who had saved his life. The little mermaid's eyes filled with tears. Sorrowfully, she turned away and swam home.